Hi, everyone. This is David Belsky, CEO and founder of FlowerHire. Welcome to the Sunset Session, virtual style. We have a great, an amazing guest and a friend today, Lulu, the co-founder and chief experience officer of On the Revel. Lulu, thanks for coming.
What's up, Belsky?
What's up?
I'm so excited for this.
Me too, Lulu. I remember I came out and spoke to an On the Revel event prior to COVID in New
Looked it
York.
up. I just looked it up, David, and it's when you had short hair, and
Uh,
that was March 8th, I believe, 2019. So,
yeah, that was I basically my last haircut was right before then. I wanted to present myself well to New York, and obviously New York industry is come along and is present now. Obviously, on the Revel has obviously evolved into something amazing for the cannabis community and for the broader New York community, which I'm excited to get into. Um, but this is going to be fun. So, tell me about what is on the Revel for those that don't understand what on the Revel is.
on the Revel, we literally create gatherings for people who are working in cannabis, which is our trade show, our buyers club. For people that are, curious about cannabis, we have speaker series, and then folks that enjoy cannabis, which is our festival. So we're trying to create all the entry points of people who are, involved in cannabis or wanting to be involved in cannabis. We try to create different types of events that gather these folks. And we started here in New York, homegrown in 2016, Jacoby Holland and I. It's almost been 9 years. It's 9 years. And we started when there wasn't a lot of kind of conversations about what was actually happening in existing markets. We had like the lab coats and suits with a lot of the conferences. We had the activists in another side of 180, and I think all of us kind of fall somewhere in between. We lean either one way or the other. And Jacoby and I went to all of the trade shows, and they just didn't really hit for us. It was like a lot of, remember back then, there was like a lot of like gatekeeping of information. There was a lot of access. So,
And
we
there were no products.
there were no, well, there were products
Well, there were products.
at the after parties.
Right.
Uh,
Outside and on the public sidewalks there were, but
exactly. And there just wasn't a lot of people that even looked like us, right? So when we met in New York in 2016, and we both come from existing markets. So I came up on the manufacturing processing side in Washington. Jacoby came up from Colorado in one of the first verticals. So, and we met because we're both in tech and had, tech platforms. And then we said, hey, fuck it, we're in New York. Look at all the people here. There's a real opportunity because there's something missing that we would want to go to. So that's when we, started seeding some of the folks we met along the way that we fucked with. Ooh, am I allowed to say?
you're good.
Okay. Sorry, Zoe. And that's how it all started. And meetups, and then we went to the speaker series that you came to and talked about
Yep.
years as we were starting to get excitement in the market. And then COVID happened, so we took it online, and you were gracious enough to come back as one of our speakers on the podcast video thing that we were trying to do. And then the market opened December 2022 in New York. We had our first kind of comeback conference, and then the market opened, and we launched our trade show. And here we are 2 years later. I think we're the largest and probably the most impactful trade show in New York right now.
Yeah, I mean, man, I went to the one earlier this year in Hudson, and what an amazing event in terms of like the folks that are actually making things happen in the adult use market, that are working together, that are customers, that are supply chain partners, buyers, sellers, producers, salespeople, founders, marketers, all sort of present. And it was such a good moment for me being present there because the energy of an adult use market that is going from, let's just say, 1 billion and change of sales to maybe 4 or 5 billion in sales, jaw willing over the next 3 or 4 years. Um, but who knows under the current way that cannabis is being legalized on the state level, if there'll ever be that story again. Probably not the size of market again, and or the growth. I mean, California, when it went adult use, had a thriving medical market, which arguably was bigger than the current adult use market by a wide margin, right? And so New York, though, was a very limited market. And the idea that obviously the rollout has been far from perfect. It's not what we're going to talk about today, but we know it's been far from perfect. But the idea of the intent behind keeping this sort of individual entrepreneurial spirit of New York present in terms of limiting access and ownership to licenses and limiting the verticals. And so you have entrepreneurs that are passionate about what they're doing and what they're growing and what they're building, what they're selling present in a room. And you captured the spirit of that for New York incredibly well. And the only thing I've seen similar was like the first Hall of Flowers that I went to in Santa Rosa, like back in, maybe 2018 or 2019. Um, but it was an amazing thing. And obviously, upcoming, I know you're doing that again, but you're also having the sort of B2C side, um, you know, specifically in New York City, here in September, right? And so probably have a little bit more of a clay to work with, for the New York venue, out of New York City venue, I'd imagine. But talk to me about sort of the upcoming event that you have, and how that's different than the one in Hudson, and what that festival is. What is the festival?
So we have two main large scale events, right? We have Buyers Club, which is our B2B. So, um, Jacoby and I both come from the operator background. So, like, we're very mindful of when we're putting things together to make sure that that point of view is always expressed. So, our upstate one is in Hudson. It's kind of the center point between upstate and downstate.
The
New York.
supply chain and the population.
Exactly. And New York City's expensive. So like hopefully having a place to meet in the middle is an easier lift. So, we want to bring in the supply chain, but then we also like some of our retailers that we bring up, like we have a bus also that we bring from the city upstate. Like some of them have never been upstate before. So like part of the magic is, folks meeting from different perspectives in different environments and still being able to connect and just do business, right? Like, and you're right, the energy in New York is unmatched. Like when we try to do programming a couple of times at Buyers Club, like you just cannot compete with the POs and the leads and the conversations that are happening in the room. And so that's the upstate one we do every spring. And then we have our New York City one, and that's our bigger event, and it's a 2 day. So day one is Buyers Club, which is B2B. And when we were planning the one in the city for the first time, we didn't have vendor days back then. So when brands can go in to a retail store and talk to folks, like that was, I think that's coming back around to be allowed, but I'm not sure on the status of that. So, Jacoby and I come from design thinking, which is like, let's look at situations and try to solve problems by really kind of doing analysis of what we can do. So we're like, okay, well, the brands are already set up. Why don't we bring in the consumers? And then why don't we try to grow the addressable consumer market and bring in what New Yorkers love to do, have a party, right? So we have culture in our backyard. So we've never been festival planners, so like it's been really challenging but very rewarding. So now we're learning about booking talent. We're learning about all the food vendors and the permits and the things you need to do for New York City. We're learning about union labor. So part of this was New York is still the epicenter of culture in the world. The cannabis industry has been almost kind of insular in a very specific type of culture. So what I've learned from being in New York for about 20 years, but also growing up on the West Coast cannabis has just been part of culture for a while, and people are very loud about it. New Yorkers, most of the people I know across all industries, even finance and leadership in finance, they all consume, but everyone's really quiet about it. So New Yorkers use cannabis almost like an accessory to their lifestyle. So that's what we're trying to lean into. We're really trying to, it's kind of a test for us, like literally my team and I are like, what are the things we enjoy with cannabis? And why don't we just try it? And I think that's one thing that I was talking to Jacoby the other day. It's like, we're not, we're kind of a volunteer organization in a lot of ways. It's homegrown. We started way back in the day of, trying to be of service to our community and to our future market. So we might not be very like, we don't have abundance in terms of currency, but we have a lot of like financial currency. But I think we have a lot of karmic currency and industry currency and community currency. And I think that's just a very different way of approaching a trade show, which is, long-term relationship building. And we don't want to come off as transactional. That's not the approach for us, at least. And I don't think that's the approach for New York, because New Yorkers do business in a very, very different way than the rest of the world.
Well, the intentions come out in the product, and ultimately, if you're focused on community and making sure that there's value, and also at the same time making sure there's different voices that are present that, need to be in the same room and work with each other, know each other, even if they're don't currently, you line it up and figure it out. You've obviously done a lot of challenging things in your career. So we said lean into the things we enjoy, with cannabis, and cannabis is a lifestyle play. Like you and I've talked about this before, where cannabis, and I believe this to be true too, is from a recruiter and talent and search perspective. It's like, is cannabis retail? Sure. Is it CPG? Yeah. Is it regulated beverage? Okay. Is it agriculture? Yes. But it's also its own thing, and it also involves technology, and it involves culture and lifestyle and health and wellness, in medicine. And so, like, it really is its own thing unto itself, which I think is why, for like marketers, the plant and the ramification of the plant and its effect on humanity at this time in our history is such a profound calling. Even for professionals to want to work in something that aligns themselves with the work that they do. But when you talk about leaning into the things we enjoy with cannabis as New Yorkers, or you and Jacoby, what are you talking about?
Music, like mine are going to be music, food, and just hanging out. I mean, like all the things that you just mentioned, like cannabis is an Uber connector. Like it's like literally at the hub of all of those spokes that come into it. And like for always food, food and cannabis go hand in hand.
So you're
With
talking about like SMB owned, like mom and pop food trucks that are like authentic New York stories. Because New
yeah,
York, from a cuisine perspective, is a diner's paradise.
well, we're doing a partnership with Smorgasbord this year.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, I'm excited about that. They're one of the largest food festival
Yeah.
producers in the US. So they're coming in and we're doing our first partnership with them. Yay!
Nice job.
You. We're bringing in some New York talent. So we have Angel and Dren DJing, Phony People's come in as the band, Dos Flacos from the Bronx. And then we have one more we're almost closing out on. And of course, like it's New York. So there's a couple celebrities that are going to be popping in. So, it's just like, I remember when I first came to New York like 20 years ago, and I just go into a party or a dinner or, a club, and it was just all walks of life. And from Oregon, I was raised in Oregon. I'd never seen that. And like, I
Right.
think that's the beauty of New York. You can go anywhere and just different types of people are there. And it kind of also forces you to just interact differently and be open. Like you're
Yeah.
forced to connect with people, you're
Yeah.
on top of each other. So that's just been something that we, as my team, like we've all been here for many, many years. We're all integrated into our communities. And it's just kind of like almost like honoring New York and creating something that just vibes along with how New Yorkers are. And that's part of the UX side that we really try to do is like create things not for us, like in what we think people want, but like do the discovery calls, learn and listen from our friends, and the operators, and just really design things that they're going to enjoy, and design things that are going to be helpful for them, design things that are going to lift them up, because as they grow, we get to grow alongside them, and that's the best feeling.
You have like you have a service mindset to to producing these things, and they probably have a good vision, but there's an element of trust but verify, and talking to people and soliciting feedback to make sure it comes together in the way you want it to. And and yes, New York City and the New York City area is the most diverse place in the world. Um, but you've always, even before the festival and the buyers club, even in the early days of the meet and learn about cannabis and learn about the legal markets that I was first part of. You did a really good job of paying homage to different, opinions, and different perspectives. I think we had a panel on jobs, and you had, Christine De La Rosa, amazing person who comes at that angle, with a very, social justice first mindset. And then you had um, an investor, on the panel as well, that who had invested in a portfolio of companies. And then you had myself, who, runs a recruiting and search firm, talking about jobs in cannabis. So it was like the audience that was there, I forget the name of the venue.
Oh my God.
Um,
It was literally like a stand-up comedy club that
yeah,
we,
it was
yeah.
it was like subterranean, and it was,
uh, Subtraction, was that what it
I don't know. We'll have to figure that out.
closed during COVID?
Oh
So
no, but because it was full, and it was like, but the room there uh, got their minds blown in terms of how to look at all the complexity of cannabis jobs, and all the different factors that go into how we need to think about that, and understand what the meaning behind it, and I was coming from like the biggest job creation engine, restoration of the middle class. You can work your way up, and do something you're passionate about, but there's so many other ways to look at um careers in cannabis.
well, I think we as a team trust our audience too. Like we trust them to be able to have different types of opinions, right? And to create like that's part of what we do in terms of education. It's like we're going to give you all the information, right? And hopefully some things will resonate with you, and hopefully some things will spark that. It's like, oh, I want to do more, or I want to learn more. Oh, hey, this is something that I can live my dream around. So I think like having different opinions, sometimes they're provocative, sometimes they have conflict with each other, but
Yeah.
that's important. That's like so important. I just feel like at this moment in time, it's like everyone's looking to be like a monoculture and have the same opinion, but like
Right. And or like vilify different opinions. But you did a good job of finding people that had strong opinions, but also humility, to be able to listen. And that's what the plant should be. And that's what people that are involved in the plant, whatever reasoning is, need to be open, and you tend to find more of that, I think.
I think
Um,
yeah, it's very interesting to see how people approach it, right? Like some are extremely humble, listen and learn. Like, that's kind of the background that Jacoby and I come from, which is like we learn and then we try something small, and then the things that work, we just keep building on that. But there's always opportunity to learn, and there's always opportunity to look at things from a different point of view. And I think like when you're extremely single-minded, or I don't know if it's from arrogance or whatever, but it doesn't really benefit you, especially in cannabis or any type of new industry, because it's like you can do the same play if it's not working, just like sports. Okay, guys, sports. If you have a play that you're playing with your team and it doesn't work, like you try a new play, right? Or you come up with something different. So I think just having an open mind and being adaptable is just, especially New York, because New Yorkers, it's just extra, extra. It's just a different way of approaching things. So I would recommend that, brands that are coming in to New York, come out of state, just have a moment to just understand your market, understand your partners that you're going to be working with, and try something new. Like, you don't have to do it big. Like it's always like large scale. Just try something small. See how that works for you, and just keep doing little tests.
Right. I mean, it's definitely going to be a marathon. Um, so let's talk about the New York cannabis market for a second. You mentioned um, you got your cannabis roots as a with an operator in Washington State, and so how and your partner Jacoby came from Colorado as one of the had working experience in operation, one of the first verticals out there. Talk to me about how the New York cannabis industry is evolving differently than some of the other adult use markets, like most three or four most biggest differences.
I think one of the biggest differences is like when I started in Washington, it was, and I think as other markets come online, it's folks that have a lot of resources and a lot of capital to be able to have an office, to be able to have, or even apply for a license, let alone set up as an operator. So New York is just very different. Our first, I think the statistic I read was like 80%, don't like hold me to this, but I think 80% of all of our operators are social equity or, the lesser represented folks. So that in itself has been just really cool to see. And then, if you come to New York City, as a New Yorker, you don't leave your 4 block radius, right? Like everything you need is there. And it's not like these giant monolithic, like what they call them, mega stores. They're
Hmm.
small mom and pop owned stores. So, it's been cool to see that the New York operators are being reflective of what New York has always been about, which is small and medium sized businesses.
Community serving retail businesses.
There you go. Yep. So I think that's one of the biggest difference. I think I keep hearing like a lot of brands are like from other states are like, wow, didn't know edibles would do so well here. And that I think is speaking to the mainstream of folks that aren't loud smoking flower all day are
Quiet
like,
about it.
oh, hey,
Yep.
like, let's do this. So it'll be interesting to see the product categories move around as New York becomes more mature as a market. I'm really excited to see. I'm hopeful that maybe there's some more intersection, like you said, with maybe beverages coming into our hospitality worlds. I think that would be really cool. Maybe there'll be more leniences and bringing it into food as well. And so we'll see what happens. I'd love to get a cannabis beverage at the club. Like let's just
Yeah.
let's see what happens.
Yeah. It's what's interesting is every state is drastically different in its approach to the beverage world. But yeah, I mean, I with declining alcohol sales, you think the restaurants would be okay selling infused beverages. There's plenty of them in the market now. But yeah, the what I love what you're doing, obviously with Buyers Club because it's gets the industry to show up, but the festival because I always thought like New York was going to change sort of hospitality. It was going to change how cannabis and hospitality, worked based on all the mind share of entrepreneurial energy in that city and the just the overall cityscape and serving, the experiences to meet the citizens there. Not to mention like the, you know, pair that with like the upstate and how rural and beautiful and, and natural it is, right? It's like it's people forget about the upstate, but some of the retail shops in Albany and other places are the ones in the top
They're
10.
like they're stacking, they're printing money,
Pretty
literally.
money, right?
I think
Um,
people think about New York, they think about New York City, but like I'm at Rockaway Beach right now, and I was like, we have a beach here when I first came out here, and then you'll see like the A train rumbling through, like, oh shit, I'm in New York. So I think people forget that there's a lot of different types of landscapes here too. I'm learning more about upstate. I've got to say I have a car now, so I can drive around, but I think people forget like we had farming here back in the day. Like my friends had a potato farm over by the Hamptons, like way back in the day. So there's just like a lot of things that are here
ton
too.
of farming, a ton of farming, you know. and even in the, New York embracing sort of hemp early on was for the benefit of its farmers. And obviously, the biggest ag school in the Northeast, my alma mater, Cornell University, and their ag program, which, is an Ivy League school, is now offering actual cannabis courses,
Yep.
and that's another thing you and I have talked about before too. And things I've actually, in looking at how the different states have handled, you know, workforce development, social justice, social equity, no one's, obviously gotten it perfectly, but one of the things New York has done is create more of those educational opportunities to give workforces the skills to succeed in the most common jobs in this industry, and taking its sort of a really real focus on education, which I was definitely stood out to me, and how have you kind of seen that play out in New York, and how has that impacted the industry from your perspective?
It's been great to see, the different organizations within our city programs, our state programs, offer courses around workforce development. Um, in my perfect world, it would have been great for a cannabis education group to come in and first not have their cohort of people, but actually train all of these different groups that are already within the state, right? So like train those folks first in the organizations because they probably already have the extra resources to reteach that amongst their network. So like I think that would have had more impact than just
Partner with the license holders, the ones that have gotten open.
right. Because then you're just like you're serving 30-person, 40-person cohort versus maybe you're serving 30 to 40 people that already also have um, an association or organization, non-for-profit that's doing the same thing. So now like you're exponentially growing rather than like one cohort of people at a time. Like that's how my brain works.
Well,
So
no, it makes sense, especially when what you said earlier, the fact that 80% of the business licenses operating in New York State are minority or social equity owned or in some form, right? Social impact impacted by the war on drugs or from those communities or directly descendants of folks involved in that, right?
justice impacted.
Justice
Exactly.
impacted. Yeah, justice impacted. You know, but a small business,
Mhm.
let alone from a community that doesn't have access to resources traditionally that other communities might, needs the training and development support.
Yep.
So what you said makes sense. And put that truth out there, and I think there is hopefully that would make more sense in terms of rounding out the entire ecosystem, which is great that we found people that want to work in cannabis, that deserve to work in cannabis based on history and their own desires from a career. We have training, but the full ecosystem is job placement,
Yep.
and it's hard to orchestrate that, and that would maybe round two, one of these
Yep.
one of these.
Yeah, if anybody's out there listening that has a cannabis education program, that would be fantastic. Like get a cohort of state agencies, workforce development within the city, as well as nonprofits. That would be great for you guys to do a cohort with those folks, and they can take it back to their worlds and just amplify it.
Mm, yeah. All right, so I have three more questions here. Your first one is, you know, let's say I'm an entrepreneur, Lulu. I have an idea for a brand. New York I want it to be on the shelves in dispensaries. What is your advice to an entrepreneur who's seeking to be part of New York cannabis and start their own thing?
First and foremost, I would say do your discovery, go to an existing market, and go look if your product's already in play, right? Because sometimes people are like, I have the best idea, and I'm like, well, like go do some research first. See the things that you like, see like what vibe that you're trying to do with your brand, and then I think the next thing is you're probably going to want to find a manufacturer that's going to work with you Do your research with that as well. I think it's a lot of times like people come in with a lot of wrong expectations. So get to your partners, take your time. And I think like, show up. If you're launching your brand, you can't just assume someone's going to sell that for you, right? Even if you have to be part of it. You have to show up. You have to be in the community. Um, you have to be seen, loving the stuff that you're doing. So I think it's just showing up, doing research, and just also being able to know that things are going to change. It's a huge roller coaster in cannabis, highest of the highs, lowest of the lows. So also just be ready to pivot and also be ready to fail. That's okay. Like you're not going to get it right the first time, the second time, maybe the third time, and then something clicks and then you're in flow. So it's not the easiest industry, but I mean, there's no, how do I say this? There's never been a place in my history of work where I've had this much freedom to lay a path that I want to be walking down. And I think for me, like that gift of having this freedom to create, to build supersedes any of those like fat paychecks I was getting when I was working in corporate, like
There are easier ways to make a dollar than working in cannabis.
oh my God, yeah. So but where else am I gonna go now? Like,
Nowhere. I'm in.
you said it's out of the matrix, Belsky. We're out of the matrix and we can't go
Yeah.
back.
I know. I don't want to go back. So you can't. Literally, they pulled it. They pulled the thing out of the back of my head. Um, give me a prediction for New York cannabis. Like, okay, we'll say 2 full years. You're entering 2028. What's going on in New York cannabis at that point? Like, what are we talking about here? 36 months from now. What's the reality on the ground in New York cannabis?
Oh my gosh. That is a really big question. More lawsuits, probably. There's a couple things that just went down last week. We don't have to talk about that. Um, it is a political year coming up, so we'll see what happens with Mamdani versus the more conservative people that are freaking out in New York right now. That might have the outcome of that might have some play. I think there's been some political flexing going on back and forth. Just my opinion, right? This is just my opinion. Um, like I said, I would love to see some intersection with the state liquor authority and cannabis, like OCM, maybe the health department to really start growing and allowing for low dose things to be incorporated within our hospitality worlds. Um, I'd love to have an event license that can be, at our larger festivals, at our larger sporting events, or any of the things that, New Yorkers love to do when they go out because our apartments are so tiny. So we always have to be outside.
Yeah.
Um, I would love to see, gosh, 6 months. I think what they want, what was the number again? 700 or 600 retail doors open by the end of this
Hmm.
year. I think we're at 450 almost, something like that. So they've been opening them up. It'd be great to see some more innovation in product. We're still doing a lot of flower and vapes. I'd love to see what happens with the different types of products.
You mean like in other adult use markets, you tend to see a trend towards like infused, whether for better or for worse,
Right.
in infused pre-rolls. You get into like the rosin based products for vape and gummies that aren't just disty,
Right.
right? And so, those tend to creep into the assortment in retail and more mature markets, you
Like I would
know.
love, like condiments, at Shake Shack, just like I'm really curious to see what type of like cross collaborations with different, brands. I think that would be really interesting. Like I don't know, just I'm hopeful that the entrepreneurial spirit of New York is going to have a greater influence on
Yeah.
all that.
Well, there's a lot of opportunity to be the firsts to do the first of its kind collabs with traditional businesses based on the cultural elements and the sort of awakening of it's okay to talk about this now because we're all doing it, you know, and a lot of hardworking, creative people that are trying to figure out a framework by which New York cannabis can represent itself, you know, in the right ways. I like that. Okay, for On the Revel, what's the future of On the Revel? You mentioned partnership with the food the food
Smorgasburg. Yeah, Smorgasburg.
yeah. So that's a great partnership because then you have foodies and cannabis and what I think those and music, you know, all go well together. What is the future of On the Revel?
I mean, I would love to build, I mean, we're gonna have our trade show. I would love to grow the festival into more of like a South by or a Basel. So, bringing in the art, creative film industry,
Tech.
tech, yep, AI, VR, AR. I mean, been costing out some of these AR things we've been wanting to do. So putting it on the vision board. We'll, have to get Jacoby drunk to say yes to release the budget for me one day. Um, so yeah, I'd love to just bring more elements in that, larger experiments, activations, immersive things. I'd love to, start bringing in some different types of performers as well. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. And then January 2026, we're launching our psychedelics conference. So that's going to be super dope.
Is that in New York?
That's in New York. Yep. Yep.
I'll be there.
I know you will.
Hey.
And then with Chris, Pizza Pusher at Aura Tulum,
Yeah.
probably doing some more like retreats and activities at his holistic healing center in right outside Tulum. Full plate.
Well, you there is definitely vision there and a lot of dots to connect, but they're connecting. They're connecting actively, and so you know every year in New York you're gonna see that grow and grow, and it turns into a South by. I mean, obviously New York can very much support the intersection of all of those things because they're all very much present in New York,
In our
and
backyard, right? It's
right.
and just like part of it is just what do you have nearby and incorporating that. And fortunately, this girl who grew up in Oregon is now in New York, and we're very grateful to just be part of New York's market growth at this moment in time. It's actually really beautiful to see.
It is. It is a special time. It is the glory days, if you will, of the New York market. You're living through it, past is the past, but where it is now and what's ahead in the short term, the medium term, it's amazing. So, and you're at the center of it, bringing people together to make it happen in the right ways. Lulu, thank you so much for joining today. You're the best. Can't wait to see you.
Can't wait to see you, Belsky, September 12th and 13th. You're 36 in NYC.